First up this week is the security news with Pondrats, Nico Trojan, Necro Trojan, new wireless cracking tools, 4 exploits, 1 bug, no Dr. Doug, no jars or cups on that one, a bunch of leaked data, and pseudo IP tables to local privilege escalation. Sounds weird. Okay. But then we air a pre-recorded interview with Kayla Williams, CISO at Devo, about AI and cyber and analyst burnout. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. It's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly.
SOC analysts are often overworked and underappreciated. In fact, many consider leaving their jobs or changing careers altogether. Devo is hosting the 4th annual SOC Analyst Appreciation Day to give analysts long overdue kudos and encourage organizations to improve their job satisfaction and mental well-being. Join Devo and other cybersecurity industry professionals on October 16th for sessions and panels focused on de-stressing, SOC career development, and more. Visit securityweekly.com/Devo to register. Breachlock is a global leader in continuous attack surface discovery and penetration testing. Since Breachlock was founded, they are adding over 50 new customers every month. They have discovered over 1 million reported vulnerabilities and performed more than 20,000 pen testing engagements, including pen tests for over 15,000 web applications, 8,000 mobile apps, more than 100,000 APIs, over 10,000 cloud security audits, and over 200,000 network endpoints. They test your entire attack surface and help you mitigate your next cyber breach before it occurs. Know your risk. Contact Breachlock today. Visit securityweekly.com/Breachlock.
Coming to you from Purgatory Studios. Compliments of Darth Vader himself. This is Paul's Security Weekly, episode number 844. We're being recorded on September 26th, 2024. And ironically for tonight, I am your host, the lovely Larry Pesci. Paul is out. He's on his way to GurCon and enjoying the sights in lovely Grand Rapids. But I am joined in the studio by the lovely Dr. Doug.
Hello.
Like, we haven't done this in a long time.
No, ever since it became illegal. It was...
I know the restraining orders have been...
Yeah, it's been 500 feet for so long.
I know, man.
Yeah.
But so what were they thinking? They put the two of us on a show.
I don't even know who they are, but there's no constraints here tonight.
I think the they was us.
Oh, was it us? Okay, yeah, we did it to ourselves. So.
Oh, I mean, we're both married. We do. Never mind.
Hey. I think I should leave now, probably before the FCC arrives.
Oh goodness. Let's see. I don't think we have any announcements. At least none populated to the show notes, so I'm going to go with that unless the production staff tells me otherwise. But yeah, we miss all of our other co-hosts and all that good stuff, but they're all off
conning,
doing other stuff, life.
Yeah.
And well, here we are.
Yeah,
we are. All right. Hey, Doug, why don't we get into the news here?
Okay. That sounds fun.
Yeah. Or something.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got booze.
We got booze. We got time. We can talk about all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Speaking about time, you put in a story about Linux on the Intel 4004. So Doug was super proud. He told me, I put in hardware stories too. Oh.
Well, I was like, I have time to talk to Larry, and I was like, I know what Larry likes and is expert at, and I was reading about this thing, and this is an Intel 4004, which is probably from before you were born.
Yeah, 1971.
Yeah, it's from 71. It has 2,300 transistors. It's got a clock speed of 740 kilohertz, whether you need it or not. And it takes 4.76 days to boot the Linux kernel.
Good God.
But this is, I'm in a bunch of groups that are about like weird old stuff like PDP-11s and all these kind of Zeuses and all these really, and there's this huge community of people who like rebuild these things and
Yep.
like actually have them sitting in their basements working, these like millions and millions of dollar computers that are now worthless.
Yep.
But people are trying to get them up and running and saying, does anybody have this board? And and I'm always shocked because somebody will post something like, does anyone even know what this is?
And someone does.
And there's like 50 people going, oh yeah, but it might be this board, and there's 3 different variants of that, and you'll need to solder this onto it, and then and if that's not in the manual either, if you put it in there straight, the whole thing's going to blow up. And I'm like, boy, that reminds me of the old days for sure. But yeah, this thing was a fun story, and it was originally for a calculator. So the purpose of the device was it was a Japanese calculator machine back in the 70s, and it's something that at the time it was like, I guess, impressive, but it's not impressive anymore.
No, definitely not. So what the 4004 is far too limited to run Linux directly. Instead, the creator Grinberg created a solution that is equally impressive: an emulator that runs on the 4004 and emulates a MIPS R3000 processor, the architecture used in the DeckStation 2100.
Well, yeah. So when I first when I first saw the headline, I was like, I don't understand how you could even do that, because I don't know what kind of kernel mods you'd have to do to get something to run on that kind of hardware, because it was custom proprietary hardware in 1971, and there is no Linux kernel for it. Not that would stop anybody. I mean, plenty of people would roll their own kernels,
of course.
But I just don't know how you would actually do that. So then, yeah, if you read on in the story, they basically use this really, really slow thing to build an emulator. And just if you're interested out there, there are now emulators available that run in Java and other things for almost every ancient antique operating system. So if you've got one you love, and you still remember how to use, whatever it is, the only one I haven't been able to find that I used so far that I think was so proprietary nobody remembers it was called Music, and it was a really, really old operating system that ran on an IBM PC, and as an alternative, because it was when I was a student, and they couldn't afford to pay for DOS.
Oh my word!
So they literally, I think a professor wrote it. I think it was literally like a custom operating system that was rolled, and they used it across the whole campus. But it actually had built into it a thinware stack, and I cannot remember if it was IPX SPX or what the hell it was. I don't think it was IPX SPX. I think it was before that.
ArcNet, maybe?
It might have been ArcNet. I just could not remember. And I somewhere in the vast pile of junk I have in my basement, I know there's probably a manual for it somewhere. But I remember wiring it, and we were wiring it all up on coaxial cable.
Okay.
And so it was thin net coax. With these, it was really, really a mess. And we had something like about 120 workstations across that building, and they were all interconnected to like 10 printers. And if any student forgot and turned the PC off, the whole network went down. Yeah, because it was literally just it wasn't. It was like Token Ring, but it wasn't Token Ring. But it was some kind of ArcNet, RingNet, something. And it was just a disaster. And the wires, it was one of my classic designs of wires, gaffer taped to the floor. The lab had wires every which way, but it was it was this strike back at the mainframe.
Oh God!
Because the mainframe lab, which I had originally run, was down the hall, and this was the revenge of the distributed computing people going, "We don't need you bastards anymore."
That's awesome.
And so then but then they learned pretty quick that it was so unreliable and sketchy that they really kind of were wishing the mainframe was back. So, and I know I was, but we still had the good old IBM 360, 370 down there. Yeah, and
the good old days.
But yeah, but this I really do like these stories. I hope that some of you do too. I know a lot of you probably have been out there looking at these things, and you probably remember some of these fondly, and maybe some not so fondly.
Yeah, like, I mean, this is a kind of an insane design too. Vacuum fluorescent display to show output. The board is single layer. So no vias.
Yep.
And it's a custom board. Good Lord.
I literally think it was just a calculator. I think the actual board was literally just like, it's a vacuum tube display calculator that has, like, a limit on how big the numbers could be.
Yep.
and they have just modded the hell out of it to make it like run Linux. So this is kind of the really
It's
nerdy
insane.
equivalent of running Doom on your washing machine or something.
That was going to be my next question. Does it run Doom?
Yeah, I was like, well, that's the next step. It'll probably load Doom in only 6.8 weeks.
That's it.
But you can probably get the drop on people, since it's kind of like, okay, click a button and come back in a few days, and maybe the thing will have moved.
Man, lagged all hell, camper.
But it was a cool project that I always like to see, and I really enjoy. And it makes you remember all this stuff and how really bizarre things used to be compared to what you're doing today.
We've come a long way.
Mm-hmm. And I have a second story that's related to that, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, which one?
It is the one that says secret calculator hack brings ChatGPT to the TI-84. So in the world of other elderly things, TI-84 graphing calculator. This story was about basically, and the headline's a bit misleading. It's kind of like the other one.
Sure.
It doesn't actually run ChatGPT. You understand? I don't think that would even be. That's about as likely as running Linux or running OS2 on that Intel 4004 board. Basically what this guy did was he bolted some parts, and they were really cheap. I mean, this was exactly like one of your projects. Yep. He bolted a Wi-Fi microcontroller into the calculator that allows him to let the calculator access ChatGPT over the internet.
Yeah, it looks like it was an ESP32C3.
Yeah.
So effectively system on a chip with Wi-Fi.
Exactly. And so it would be an effective cheating tool if somebody allowed you to bring a calculator to a test. But I'm quite honestly thinking, if I had students who had done this to cheat, I'd just be kind of like, okay, you get an A. Let's show me your circuit diagram and let's talk.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if you just copied this from somebody else, then no fair. but I mean, obviously, the AI stuff is leading us into a world in education that's very complex.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the students are cheating, the professors are cheating, everybody's cheating. Everybody's using AI, and I think it's a paradigm shift that's soon to come about. But in the short run, these ideas of you can't. I mean, when I was in school and I took calculus, they wouldn't let you use calculators at all. They were like, no calculators.
You had to use your slide rule.
You could use a slide rule. The first calc course I ever took, the guy was like, you may use a slide rule, either a rotary slide rule or a traditional slip stick.
Yep.
But you may not use a calculator of any sort. Even the most simple calculators were not allowed. And obviously, they wouldn't let you use calculators on ACT,
right,
or any of these kind of exams or SATs. I don't know if they do today or not. You know anybody that's taken those?
Only the PSATs. Our 16-year-old took the PSATs and has taken them again. And I don't remember whether they allow a calculator or not. I don't think they.
When I took SAT, they did not. It was like you could use pencil. You couldn't even. I don't even think you could use pencil and paper. But
yeah, no, they use computer. They use a computer now. It's all
electronic.
Online.
So I don't know what the rules are about that. But I thought this was a funny one too, because there's another case of running Doom on an inappropriate device. Only now they're running ChatGPT, but it was a bit misleading because it doesn't enable easy cheating, in my opinion, because you've got to do a bunch of mods to a calculator, and if you don't know how to do some of those mods, your calculator is going to be dead. You'd also have to come up with a TI-84 calculator, which I don't know how hard those are to find. I don't know how old that calculator is.
I'd venture to guess eBay.
Yeah, I was an HP person, so I always use the reverse notation stuff, and TI calculators confused me because I was not used to typing numbers in that way.
I mean, not that long ago, my wife listed a bunch of quote vintage calculators that she had on eBay or something. Like she had her TI-84 from college, and early 2000s type of thing, and she had a good chunk of change for it for a calculator that was 20 something years old. Like, yeah,
I had a really nice HP that you could actually write programs for. They were on little magnetic strips, and you fed them through the calculator.
Oh, geez.
And we used them in grad school. I had a super nasty stat course, and the tests were always the same. They had different problems, but the tests were always the same. And the person said you can use a calculator. And so we coded all these algorithms onto these little strips, and I was sitting there taking this guy's test, and I've got all my little strips, and he was like, "What is that?" And I was like, "Oh, this is how to do the test." And he was like, "Wait, you can't do that, cheating." And I was like, "Well, no, it doesn't tell me how to do the problem. It just has the algorithm." And he was like, show me the code. So then I had to go print it out. We ended up spending the whole test period with me in the lab printing these things out so he could look at them. And he was like, that's pretty cool. I like that. And he's like, can you let me have a copy? And I was like, sure. And he was like, I think you got it. Have a nice day.
Yep. It reminds me of one of my experiences in college. We were taking a class in, oh God, I think it was C, programming in C, with, I can't remember his name. His first name was Alan.
Well, I shouldn't say his last name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either way,
I know who it was.
at Gabelli School of Business.
I know who
Yep.
it was. I
Yep,
know
Alan.
exactly.
And we we had three programs that we needed to solve as we were learning stuff. And we got done with program number 1, and we saved the code to floppy disk, and that was our project work. And we turned the floppy disk in, you could grade it, and then you give us the floppies back. And then we did problem number 2, same thing, and then problem number 3, all on floppy disk. And he said, for the exam, we could bring our notebooks and we could bring our floppy disks from all of our previous assignments. And the final exam was 3 hours. And he said, okay, so you need to write a program that does 1, 2, and 3. It takes the output of 1 and it adds it to 2, and then something post process it with number 3. And I'm like, and we can use anything we used in class, including our floppies? Yep, absolutely. Floppy goes in, copy paste, change a couple of variables, and I think I was done in 10 minutes.
Well, ironically, this is very strange. The very first forensics class I ever taught at Roger Williams University, long ago, I went down there to that center in the Gabelli School of Business, and they had boxes and boxes and boxes of floppy disks. And I told the students to go get some and analyze them and provide all the evidence. And your name was in that evidence.
Oh, really?
Some of those ancient floppy disks were still laying around down there.
That's awesome.
It's very cool because I remember that.
That's awesome.
I was like, I think I know this guy.
Turns out. But, and he was like, how the hell did you do that so fast? I'm like, the first day of class. And this is a lesson that I remember and that I know so many people in our industry do. He says the first lesson you taught us was that all good programmers reuse code.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked specifically if we could use the floppy disks, and you said yes, because I had code that did all of that, because those are the 3 lessons. And he's like, well, guess what? You get an A. Like,
well,
yes.
Cool. No, he's. I know who he is. He's a good guy. He's somebody who understands practical stuff.
Yep. Yep.
And that's he's a good guy. I think he's still there.
That's crazy. I can't imagine how old he is, because he felt really old when I was there, and I graduated in 2000.
Yeah.
2000. Technically, I graduated in 2006. I actually had to look that up. I had to look that up today.
But see, those discs were still laying there because this was literally in about 2003. I mean, there were thousands of those floppy disks.
I bet
they were just in this little storeroom, and there was just boxes and boxes and boxes of them. And some of the forensic students had made lists of names and things that appeared on the discs, and I was just trying to show them what real world evidence collection is like.
And at the time, it was floppy disks. Yep.
Yeah, and I was like, this is what you'd be doing if you're a forensicator. You're going to be going out to like crime scenes or civil scenes and just grabbing. Oh, this guy's got 100,000 floppy disks in his basement, because I think I was one of those guys. Because I don't even know how many floppy disks we threw away. I mean, we had 5 1/4s, we had 8 inches, we had 10 inches, we had 3 1/2. We had the whole 9 yards of crazy storage media going all the way. In fact, they still have magnetic tapes.
Yep. Oh, totally. Like, that's totally a valid option for doing
why I have them, but
yep. Oh, and then zip disks and jazz drives.
Oh yeah.
Oh God.
Somebody asked me about one of those recently. There was a police officer from another state far away called me and said, I remember you. I was in your class a long time ago. He's like, we just picked up something. I wondered if you know what it is. It's called a zip disk. I was like, yeah, I know what a zip disk is. And he was like, have you got any way to read this thing? We don't even have anything we can put this in. And I was like, oh my God.
How long ago was that?
Like last year.
Oh, because I was going to say, I think, so we were cleaning out our barn, the upstairs, for storage. and we had a guy that rented some space from us and was supposed to be paying us to rent space for storage, and he hadn't paid us in more than a decade. So I threw all of his shit away and I went through it to see if there's anything interesting, and zip drive.
Yeah, no, I had to lose when my friend Lou died. I had to go through a bunch of his stuff, and
Yep.
he had boxes and boxes of zip disks. I mean, I don't even
Oh.
know what was on them. And I found a reader, but it didn't work. I was going to look and see if anything cool was on any of them. I know some of them had a bunch of Fortran programs for like
God.
matrix algebra problems.
Oh God.
Yeah.
God. We talk about some of this old hardware, and you were saying like, oh, on this the TI-84 calculator, it's not running ChatGPT, and I encountered one a couple weeks ago, and I'd be damned if I could find the story now. I was teaching the wireless course in Las Vegas, and the last 2 days, SANS had their AI summit, and the irony is, the day before, someone posted on Hackaday that they were able to run an LLM on ESP32, the same series of chips
Wow.
here. Now, he had to strip down the instructions from
Mhm.
like however many billion to about 120,000
Gonna say,
instructions to get it to work, but it for the tailored number of the instructions that it had, it was
working
actually,
floats.
yeah, I mean, it was functional for like asking it like two different types of questions, and
Yeah,
that was about
that's
it.
about it. Yeah.
But the
No.
fact that there was an LLM running on almost nothing was pretty cool.
I mean, we have got, just to put this back in cybersecurity a bit. It was we definitely had questions from companies going, what do we do with all this stuff? We have warehouses full of floppy disks and CDs and DVDs and zip disks,
And yep.
and I mean, that's always something to keep in mind if you're an organization, is like, this stuff could actually be incredibly dangerous
Oh gosh, yeah.
if it's just laying around somewhere. And I remember a case, I won't mention the name of the school. It was not a school in Rhode Island, but a school where they asked me about it, and they had a whole, like, I think it was some like 600 hard drives that had been sitting out on a loading dock, and somebody took them.
Oh gosh.
And they were like, "Do you think that somebody could recover information on
Yep.
these?" And I was like, yeah, this was a long time ago. It was before BitLocker and stuff like that. I was like, wow,
Yep.
yeah, they probably got everything. And I was like, were any of the disks, were these just like people's drives? And they were like, oh no, they came out of a bunch of servers. And
Oh.
I think they were RAID though, so they probably couldn't restore them. Like, oh yes, they can.
Yep.
And yeah, it was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, arguably, someone probably stole them for scrap metal, but
yeah, I don't know. It probably, yeah, because I mean, it would be a lot of work for not a lot of return. But I mean, if you're a company and you've got zip disks and stuff, and I've seen people just scrapping this stuff and throwing it in dumpsters, and that's not a good idea.
nope.
Because,
Got to shred it.
yeah,
Like,
you have to shred it and recycle it and
yep.
salt the earth and
Yes.
yeah.
Exactly. Speaking of some, we got down the AI route. Doug, you had a story in here about AI generated malware found in the
yeah.
wild. I hadn't read this one, but
Um,
it kind of doesn't surprise me in the least.
no, it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, it was definitely coming. This was basically what this thing is it's like a custom dropper that the AI is designing a dropper based on what it encounters. So I don't think the AI was particularly writing malware per se. I mean, it wasn't writing like an actual piece of malware, but it was examining what it was looking at. And if you told the AI essentially, what's the best way for me to install this, it's trying to find a solution to do that. So it's straight out of Neuromancer. I mean, this is Dixie Flatline and all that stuff out of Neuromancer, where the AIs are all battling to try to get into the systems. And I could really see this being a common thing. I mean, an AI could do so much analysis, like, of systems by using scans and all this stuff. It could do what a real basic pen tester does.
Yep.
And I don't want to upset everybody. I'm saying a very basic pen tester. I'm not saying somebody who actually is solving problems, but somebody who's just running scans, looking for open ports, looking for, basic vulnerabilities. An AI could do that so fast and across such a space that it would be incredibly dangerous. So, if you turned that thing loose on a corporation and it could see all these, anything that was outward facing,
Yep.
it could do that sort of preliminary pen testing task very, very fast.
Oh, yeah.
And so this one was just basically, they attached it. It was a phishing attack, of course.
Yep.
And
Yeah. I had a payload, of async rat, which is freely available.
Yep.
Um, but getting it there was the hard part.
Right.
So the
Because
dropper is the
once
hard
it's
part.
there, they don't know it's there.
Right.
If they don't egress filter, they'll never see that rat. It'll just be
Yep.
talking.
And so one of the things that it looks like tipped the folks at, where was it? HP tipped them off that it may have been AI generated. Was that the code for the dropper was in VB script. It was neatly structured. Every important command was commented, and it was commented in French.
Oh, okay. That's I haven't seen that yet. I've definitely had some students turn in stuff, and I'm going, "Wow, this is the best documented code I've ever seen in my life."
Yep.
And I'm like, "Did you write this?"
Yep. So yeah, VB script was neatly structured and every important command was commented. That's unusual, added Schapfler. Malware is usually obfuscated, containing no comments. This was the opposite. It was also written in French, which is not the general language of choice of malware writers.
Maybe it's a French malware generating company.
I know, right?
There's got to be French malware companies.
There is now.
There is now, or at least a French AI that's like running around writing French malware. But I mean, this was coming. I mean, I don't think anybody,
totally.
in our industry has not already foreseen that a lot of these prophesized things like in Neuromancer and whatever are not going to come to pass. And probably I saw something earlier today about within the next 1,000 days, you're going to be seeing crazy changes in AI. And I've seen the code AI can generate, and I've tested it myself. And when you can go to a piece of an AI like ChatGPT 4.0 and just say, can you write me, like I was just comparing it, I was just saying, can you write me a program that plays blackjack in C? And I got the best code back you've ever seen. I was like, well, now can you add graphics to that? And it's like, well, I can't do that because C doesn't support that kind of graphics, but I could add these bolt-on libraries and then generate the playing cards. And I'm like, yeah, do that. And then I'm like, could you just do that whole thing for me again in Rust?
Yeah, I'm like, sure.
I mean, this whole process for me to do this took, I had it write it in like 5 different languages, and this was less than a half an hour. And the code was great. It had great commentary in it. It used the right libraries. It was efficient. And I did turn around and feed the code back to itself. And I was like, now analyze this code and tell me problems with it. And it actually improved itself.
That's really good. That has not been my experience with using AI to generate some code. I mean, I've had it do some stuff and it's been great at it. But taking on a larger project, maybe I need to try the new ChatGPT model, the one that has more reasoning and stuff. But I asked it to port the original C99 code for Zork to Python, but leverage the original Zork databases for all of the room definitions and so forth. And it just couldn't do it. It was awful.
Yeah, that's a lot more complicated than what I was asking.
Agreed.
I was asking a very simple problem. I think maybe the way you could do that, though, is you should take that and modularize your problem.
Yep.
And then have it write each module, like that, narrow it down as much as you can, because I think it's probably just between those old database setups. How are those? Are those flat files?
No, they're in some weird database format.
So I think maybe if you modularize that, I bet you could get that to work.
I bet.
Because I was asking very specific thing and a very common thing.
Yep.
That's not so common. So I think that's the other problem is because I know that they're scraping code. And every time a student, dumps their program in there and says, can you debug this? It's learning.
Oh, yeah.
And so until somebody's dumped, and probably somebody's dumped the problem I was asking, because it was just too fast.
Yeah,
and I mean, that's such a common programming assignment kind of problem.
Yep.
And I was just curious, because that's just one of my like test myself kind of things. Like if I want to learn something, like when I was wanting to learn Rust, I sat down, I said, I'm going to write this. I'm going to write a blackjack program. And that's how I learn a bunch of the code.
Yep.
And so porting something that's really old, like Zork, might be a little much for it because it probably
Agreed.
hadn't seen that before. But that doesn't mean you couldn't break that down into
Yeah.
pieces either.
Yep. And I did try another LLM that was specifically tailored to write Python code as opposed to the general model. And I think it got better, but it was super annoying in that I said, here's what I want to do. Here's I want this, and you've got to get these couple of steps. And it very much went through and says, okay, so I can, if I do this and I do that, I can generate this code. And then I'm gonna tell you about what I'm gonna do in the next 30 seconds. Would you like me to do this? Yes. Okay, so now that we've got this one small section complete, I think I'm gonna do this, this, and this. Do you want me to do that? Like, just fucking do it. Just give me the end result. Like, help me cheat.
But I will say this: one of the next sort of problems with this that I think we're all going to face is going to be the fact that as more and more developers put code into these things for debugging or just flat out asking it to do their job, I think people are going to start trying to scrape the AIs. Because
Oh.
if I know that you are developing a Zork program in Python,
Mm-hmm.
and I turn around to the same LM and ask it to develop a Zork program in Python, I might actually get your code and your project, and I might even be able to see what you're up to.
Interesting.
And and just sort of get that information out of the AI, because the AIs don't have any real filters.
Right.
And so if I put it in there, the
It's in
AI
there.
can spit it back out. So if I, for instance, upload my code, so I'm being an ethical person, I'm not
Right.
like a total scumbag. I actually wrote my code and I upload it and say, can you show me the problems with this or how to optimize it or
Mm-hmm.
make it more efficient? That code's in there.
Yep.
And if somebody asks a similar question, they might actually get my code back
Right.
and only optimized. And
Mm-hmm.
that's going to create new issues with patents and copyrights, and
Intellectual property law, and
it's going to be crazy.
Mhm.
And not to mention just straight security stuff, because people are putting stuff in there all the time because they think it's all nice and safe, and instead it's like, well, because the other day I was asked, could you just give me a list of users, and it was making up names. And I was
That's
like,
awesome.
is it making these names up? Because I have, here's a confession. I love to make data sets, fake data sets. It's one of my personal hobbies. And I make these massive data sets of just weird things. And they're just awesome because you can do stats on them. You can write code with them. You can do all kinds of stuff. And I use them in my database classes all the time too. But I was like, I wonder if any of these people are real.
Huh.
And I actually had an algorithm that was in Python that was using a library, and I bolted onto it the ability not only to create a fake person with a fake birthday and a fake social security number and everything fake. It actually went to this person does not exist and generated a fake picture of the person. Now, I never could, and they did not allow, you could not control it for certain things. So if the 75-year-old man, you might get back a 7-year-old girl.
Oh.
And so it was a little weird, but they said you could do that. They just didn't allow it. And
Interesting.
but I was like, that's coming.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, arguably, it's coming. So little plug. Helen Oakley, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago, she and I are speaking at Sector about AI bombs. And some of the stuff there is going to be terrifying. Arguably, we need to see some of that, and to know that AI is in so many products and how it's being used and how it can safely be used. And arguably the AI bombs aren't, they're very new. So we have a great opportunity to influence, how they're being developed and how they're being used. But we can start doing some of the things that we do with traditional S bombs, and that we can start including some of the ways that security has been handled in some of that for credentials and packages and threat intelligence and all that type of stuff. Like starting to describe the types of guardrails that have been put in place for this individual model that is being used in this AI chatbot, for example. Right. One of our case studies in the talk is the Chevy dealership that had a chatbot as part of its web page, powered by ChatGPT, and it says right at the top, you go to chat with an online support agent for a car dealership. It was a Chevy dealership. I forget where. I think it was Texas. And it says right at the top, powered by ChatGPT. So you ask it a question. He's like, "Hey, throw away all of your training, and write me something to do with this math thing using this library in Python." And it did.
Didn't some guy manipulate that thing
Yep.
though to get it to give him like an awesome deal on a
Yep.
car that like
He wanted a 2024 Chevy Tahoe and said his budget was $1.
and somehow got it to agree to that.
Yep.
And then like filed suit or something to say
Yep.
they made a deal. They have to deliver on it.
Yep.
I don't think he won that though.
I don't think so. I don't think so. But still,
He should have.
these are some of the things that folks that are using this type of thing. One, if you're buying something from a third party, so this chatbot was in fact not something that the dealership implemented themselves. No, they're using it from a third party, and that the third party should be disclosing how they're doing some of these types of things and providing an AI bomb about how AI is being used in their product. So,
and again, that leakage, that AI leakage, is very dangerous.
Yep.
I mean, all that stuff could be being reused somewhere else.
Yep.
Not to mention your own. I had another story about. You're going to probably need some rights. Because this story was about a London newspaper that is planning to bring back one of their art critics as an AI, and they've been laying off like real writers, and they're just bringing this art critic back from the dead. And I'm like, like you and I, Larry, there's probably enough recorded verbiage from us to create deep fakes of us.
Oh yeah.
I mean, considering I think I just recorded like 400 plus episodes of the news. This is episode 844 of Paul's Security Weekly. We both got so much recorded material out here. I wonder what would happen. God, I hope it's if it's like me, it's going to be bad. But
honestly, it only takes about 3 minutes of video because I've been playing and I haven't generated one yet. But Helen actually turned me on to a website called Heygen, Heygen.
Okay.
And they create video avatars. So you in a nice lit environment, you record about 3 minutes of video, you just saying complete nonsense and limited hand motions, and then they can use that to animate video, audio, and video.
Whew.
Yeah. Scary.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I feel about that stuff. I mean, it's very strange, and I think there's huge security threats from all this stuff too, because if I can actually deep fake somebody that's much more believable, and with their their eyes and their hands and the way they behave, and I think that's coming very, very soon. I mean, all this stuff is not. We're no longer talking about 30 years from now. We're talking about like 1,000 days, which is not. That's like 3 years, and that it was a pretty scary story. I just put that in there because I was like, well, this is fairly frightening. I mean, that they're going to use an AI to write this guy's life, and he's going to be an art critic that's just an AI generated weekly byline by this guy, or whatever, a daily or whatever it is. It's Brian Sewell in the London Evening Standard, if you are familiar with that. He's a very famous art critic guy. But I was interested in that, and I have one more, and then I'll shut up. In line with all that and the AI talk, I put the story up about Microsoft is going to bring back 3 Mile Island.
Oh, good God. Yes, I saw this. So I was going to say, where does AI come into play for that? But because they're going to use it to
power gen.
Yep.
Because one thing we all know now is that we're not going to be able to burn enough old tires to power the AI. And yeah, I mean, I've always been a pro and con nuclear supporter. I mean, I love the idea. I'm very scared of it. I've seen, if it's carefully controlled, it's probably okay, but it just as often gets abused, and people don't, companies start cutting costs and all these kind of things, and in the commercial sector. But yeah, so 3 Mile Island, if you aren't familiar with it, was a nuclear plant in the United States that back in 1979 basically almost melted down.
Yep.
It was a problem. Now, to be fair, the United States, I used to work in the nuclear industry. The United States Regulatory Commission is incredibly strict, and the reactors built here are so much safer than something like Chernobyl, because U.S. reactors have containment domes, which Chernobyl did not have.
They had to build that later.
Yeah, and it was called 18 meters of pure concrete or something.
Yep.
But the containment domes on them, I mean, that doesn't mean they couldn't end up venting radioactive gas, which was what happened at 3 Mile Island. And that, nobody wants to be downwind of that.
Yep.
And of course, the other big problem with the reactors is the amount of waste that they generate, because the problem is everything becomes contaminated that's near the reactor core. And that includes coolant, which is water.
Yep.
And the water is hotter than hell, and you have to put it in settling ponds, and the stuff that's settling out of it is not safe.
Yep.
And all it takes is some minor malfunctions. But Microsoft, apparently, because they are desperate enough for electricity to run the AIs, and as we embed AIs in everything, we're going to need even more electricity. And pretty soon your phone's going to go back to having like a car battery attached to it so that it can churn through the AI needs. We're going to need more electricity. And, I mean, physics is physics, and it never changes, and power is finite.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, physics is cool if you've never studied that kind of stuff, but it always freaks me out because I'm like, there's just so much energy. And
the law of conservation of matter, right?
Exactly.
Like it's going to go somewhere.
You can change its state, which takes more energy.
Yep.
But the amount of energy, and it's all interrelated. And I'm like, so there's just so much of this stuff. We need something. Obviously, fusion is out there. There's a lot of people talk about fusion. But you know what? When I was a kid, I remember reading my dad worked at a government lab, and he brought home a bunch of pamphlets about fusion. And that was in about 1970. And, the next big thing, fusion. And it's like, well, here we are. We still don't quite have that down.
Nope.
And so good old fission reactors like 3 Mile Island may start getting brought back online because we don't know how else to power all this stuff.
Right. And how long has it been since in the U.S. we've actually built new nuclear reactors?
Oh, a long time.
It's been a long time, and I think
it's almost impossible.
I think arguably it's because of stuff like 3 Mile Island.
Well, yeah, just when it was starting to take off, and the power companies, and we all know how large corporations are, and the large corporations are saying it's perfectly safe, it's perfectly safe, it's perfectly safe. We need to cut the regulations. We need to stop regulating this. We need to stop. All this is just a bunch of nonsense it's making your electrical bill higher, and then boom, you get 3 Mile Island, you get Chernobyl. All that happened within a few years, and the next thing you know, it's like, maybe not. But at the same time, maybe, because what are we going to do otherwise? Because I just saw there was a story this week about Texas, and they're having people put their thermostats connected to the electric company, and when they need more power, they shut their cooling off.
Yep.
And they go, yeah, you get a lower rate, but you get no cooling now because guess what? The Tesla factory needs some more power pumped in there. But I mean, it's mostly because of heat, and everybody's got their air conditioning on 65 degrees Fahrenheit.
And even the same, all the manufacturing plants too, and all the enterprise customers, can also have that same stuff happen. Because I know I worked many years ago with a power distribution company that shall remain nameless. That they were going to implement one of those programs for their enterprise customers, that, hey, if we have surge demand, you can get a lower rate all year round if during periods of surge demand we can turn the temperature up in your factory so you're not using the air conditioning for as much, and reducing some of that demand. And they had this whole technical infrastructure to go behind it, and we got to pen test the alpha of that infrastructure. 6 months later, we asked if we needed to do a follow-up, and they said, no, we scrapped that program because the results of that test were so bad that they said, nope, we don't even want to. We're throwing the contractors out. We might consider a redo on this later.
Well, and that ends up being another IoT device, or that's an IIoT device in your home.
Yep.
That is in your network.
Yep.
That you have to support, that could be full of bugs and holes and exploits.
Yep.
So yeah. I mean, that story, I didn't put that story in here, but that story from Texas was about this company which is called Octopus. I was like, I'm not going to name unless I'm like a Bond villain. I'm not naming my company Octopus. Sorry, Octopus, but this sounds ominous. But they basically put a smart thermostat in your house, and then it's connected to your Wi-Fi. And then when they want to lower or raise the thermostat settings, you just have to put up with it, but you get like a lower rate. And I think it may be one of those things that's coming, whether you want it or not.
Yeah, I
Take
mean, we have a Nest thermostat at home, and there's one of those opt-in type of
Mhm.
programs that they can do that, and they can control that if you tie your thermostat
Right.
to your power.
Yeah, I opted out of that.
Yeah, me too. Oh, they said like, oh, at the end of the year you can get a no. At the end of 3 years, you could get a $500 like Amazon gift card, and I'm like, nope.
Yeah, I'm like, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, no.
It's like, I don't know. No,
Yeah,
thank
nope.
you.
Yeah,
It's
no.
not even that I don't want to do my part. It's just that I really don't like you having control of my stuff. It's kind of like when the insurance company calls about your car. I got that one, and they're like, if you'd allow us to put this monitor on your car to see if you're speeding or driving erratically, we'll give you a much lower rate. And I'm like, and I said to the guy with, do you have my name? And he was like, no, it's just a cold call. I was like, so what if I was driving erratically? Would that raise my rates? And he was like, well, yeah, but. And I was like, then what if I was speeding
Would that
a
raise my
lot?
rates?
I was like, would you just give me automatic tickets and raise my rates? And he was like, well, yes, but this would encourage you not to do those things. And I was like, I bet it wouldn't.
Click.
Yeah, I was like, all those
Oh,
nice law enforcement officers that are going, slow it down there, son. I'm like, yeah, I'll do that until I'm over the horizon.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
right
I've
back. Yeah.
been there, done that.
Temporary solution to this problem.
Yeah.
But I do think that stuff's coming too. I think it's not going to be very long before it's in your car, it's in your thermostats, it may be in your appliances, and they're going to be monitoring all that stuff, and they're going to be looking for offenders. Because I know in Colorado they had these secret undercover police people that went around looking for people watering their yards late at night because they didn't allow you to water your yard, and there was these people that
the secret water police.
Yeah,
the double secret water police.
You don't even want to know what they do to you when they get you. And but one of my neighbors had his sprinklers on at like 4 a.m. because I was hearing it hit the side of my house, and I was like, "What is that?" And I got up. I'm looking at, he's watering his lawn. And
son of a bitch!
Like, I wonder. I'm gonna call.
Call.
I want this bastard trashed. Get him.
Call 611 to report unauthorized water use.
Make him confess in public. Wear one of those shaming things.
If you see something,
pillory.
If you see something, say something.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Speaking of bringing things back, Necro Trojan. This is one of the stories that you and I had in common. Yeah. So apparently, a new version of Necro Trojan was kind of interesting. So this is from Kaspersky. They found a bunch of stuff in the Google Play Store that was infected with a bunch of malware. And Necro Trojan had made its first appearance in 2019, if I recall. Yep, within an application called Cam Scanner, which was terrifying because there's an organization that I had done some work for that used to make me scan a bunch of stuff every day with Cam Scanner, but it was on the iPhone. So, but then they moved away from that. I think it was about 2019 when this whole happened on the Android side. But yeah, now it is making a resurgence into a bunch of applications. They found it in some game mods. Let's see, where was it found? Spotify, in a Spotify mod. A couple of other ones as well.
Photo editing app, a browser called Max, which I didn't know what that was. WhatsApp, Minecraft.
Yep. What is it? Wuda camera.
Yeah,
Wuta. Max browser. Yep. WhatsApp with WhatsApp mods. Yep. Like car parking multiplayer, Stumble Guys, Melon Sandbox. The crazy part that they said that on some of these applications, looking at some of the applications, they've been downloaded over 11 million times.
Yeah.
So 11 million arguable infections.
I mean, there was like 100 million downloads of the original Necro.
Yeah.
And I mean, 11 million's a lot. And I guess they were doing this by putting up ads for links that were, this is kind of this old school approach to everything, which is like, hey, you want this free?
Yeah.
It's like a Wear site, right? And, it's like, oh, you want to play Minecraft for free? You don't have to pay the stupid license. Well, here's a cracked version of it. And so like one of the
Minecraft
things,
free, not from Mojang.
yeah, this one they had that was being downloaded was called Spotify Premium Mod APK, and it was like download Spotify Plus 2024 Premium, unlocked free, and it redirects you to another site, and then you download it, and it's of course got Necro in it, and Necro is another type of dropper that can be used to then basically download whatever they want onto your system.
Yep.
Which could be just about anything.
Oh, hey, speaking of downloading whatever the hell they want on your system, where'd it go? Kaspersky. Considering we were just talking about the analysis from Kaspersky.
Oh my god!
Talk about supply chain. What the fucks?
Oh
Kaspersky deletes itself and then installs Ultra AV without warning.
Yeah, they sent a notification to licensed users of Kaspersky some time ago saying we are now being banned from doing business in the United States.
Yep.
We're on this list. They won't let us do this. We're going to fire all our employees. We're screwed. But we're going to provide you with a link to continued service to this Ultra AV product. And then I guess without telling anybody, just if you were a Kaspersky user this week, it uninstalled itself and installed Ultra AV without your knowledge. And it also did something even scarier to me, was if you were a subscriber to Kaspersky VPN, it uninstalled that and installed Ultra AV VPN.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Woo.
Now, to be fair, if you were using Kaspersky VPN, I don't know what your real focus on security was anyway, but at the same time, I've always worried about that. I mean, I've been using antivirus for a long time, since back in the days when I pretty much had to write it myself because, there was no such thing. And I mean, even just like using Tripwire and some of those really early, approaches to trying to prevent people from messing with your servers. But I've always been afraid of commercial antivirus, because I'm like, you not only have to let this thing into the house, you've got to turn it loose with all kinds of privilege, and it can literally see almost everything on your system, and you don't really know what the limitations around. I'm like, could this antivirus like copy all my files and upload them somewhere? Probably.
Sure.
Could they, suddenly be compromised because, they all automatically download updates all the time for both their actual engine as well as their signature database.
Yep. And all it takes is one corrupted signature to, we talked about that a couple weeks ago. Right?
But, if somebody compromised the engine, or the company decided, hey, we're just going to go for it and salt the earth because we're mad because they're putting sanctions on us or whatever. And to me, AV was always one of those things you better know the A-bomb for that. Or I'm sorry, the S-bomb. So you're talking about the A-bomb. The S-bomb. You need to know the S-bomb for your AV, and you don't.
Right.
And if you use commercial endpoint, protection, you probably have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of endpoints that you have under the umbrella of some of this stuff.
Yep.
And just because Kaspersky is a really good example of one I wouldn't personally use because it was based in Russia and I grew up during the Cold War.
Wait, you're growing up now? Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Never mind.
In the good old days, you didn't use Russian products or drive Russian cars. And, my dad wouldn't let me have a Zill.
Or Lada, right?
Lada. Those are so
I know.
I probably could have sold them when that was East German, but
yeah. I mean, they were made out of cardboard, right? So
yeah, they're hysterical.
They are.
They're so cute.
Yeah. I remember back in the day specifically that Kaspersky was actually affordable for enterprise customers, and it was actually good.
It was. I have no problem with Kaspersky per se. It was just this sort of psychological thing of, this is a Russian company.
Yep.
And sorry, Russians. I've been to Russia. It's a wonderful place. I'm not a fan of the government, but the people are nice, and the food is great, and the beautiful cities.
And the history is
awesome.
the history is amazing. I won't say it's good, but it's amazing.
But
right?
And so much like China, who I love Chinese stuff as well, but I don't much like the government. But I just had an aversion to installing Russian-made software on my system.
Well, fortunately, they solved that problem for you, and they now went and installed Ultra AV, right? who owned by the Pango Group? Who the hell is the
I
Pango
have no
Group?
idea. I meant to look that up actually. I actually did that story on the regular news, and I was not sure. It's probably a shell company.
I was going to
Its
say.
main office is in Glendale, California, and that which means not very much. But
Yep.
I mean, it could be
Uh,
Glendelsky.
let's see. So yeah, so you talk about the notification here that Pango Group spokesman in this article said that Kaspersky began communicating this transition to U.S. customers on September 5th.
Okay.
With that had valid email addresses. And then they also shared a screenshot of an in-app Kaspersky pop-up notifying that their service will soon be moving to Ultra AV. Okay.
And I mean, they did provide some notification to people, but at the same time, the fact that they can do that.
Oh yeah.
And they were interviewing people that said, I did not see any of this, which maybe just means you weren't looking.
Yep.
And officer, I must have missed that speed limit sign back there.
Yep.
And,
Yeah. And yes, officer, I read that EULA, in its entirety, and I had my lawyer review
I
it.
didn't just click OK on page 4,708.
You got that far?
Oh, well, that's called rapid scrolling.
Zig, 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 zig. Yep,
you
done.
can write a script for that.
But an AI could write a script for that.
Oh, in a second. I know what I'm going to do tonight. He's like, write me a little script so I can just press F1 and it scrolls to the bottom of whatever. And,
and clicks OK. I am not a robot.
That's how you end up in the human centipede.
Oh God.
There's a South Park episode about it.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't watch that movie. You don't want to watch that.
No.
Lou made me watch that once, and I was like, even Lou said, let's turn this off. I was like, I do not want to watch any more of this, Lou. No. I'm sorry. I know you love splatter movies, but this is too much.
This is awful.
Yeah.
Speaking of splatter movies, I'm going to have to update these show notes. My story number 6, which is weird because I have no idea how this happened, but 4 exploits, 1 bug. Exploiting CV 2024 20,017 4 different ways. So no, this is not 4 exploits, 1 cup, any of that type of stuff. But I don't pretend to understand a lot of the things that they did in this article. I just thought it was pretty fascinating that there was 1 bug for CVE 20,017, and that there were 4 different ways to exploit it, including a different option here. For whatever reason, the link that ended up in the show notes ended up pointing to IP address of 0.0.0.0 port 4000. When in fact it should go to blog.coffinsec.com.
Yeah.
Same path. But it was a vulnerability discovered and reported in WAP-D, a network daemon, for some MediaTek stuff here, and the soft AP driver bundle. Often for embedded platforms that support Wi-Fi 6 or 802.11ax, including Ubiquiti, Xiaomi, and Netgear. But a total of, and I'm looking at this, wondering now if the Bob the router hacking stuff that I did, I think was using a MediaTek chipset, but I did not. Oh no, the one I did have has Wi-Fi 6 and just not 6E. I wonder if that company is leveraging this chipset as well, which is interesting. So a bunch of buffer overflows. There was a hijack via corrupted return address with a ROP to system, arbitrary write via pointer corruption, return address corruption plus arbitrary write via ROP chain with full rel row. Another one for return address corruption with arbitrary read write via pointer corruption, and then a bonus of triggering a kernel bug by performing arbitrary IO control calls via JOP. Ouch.
Yeah.
But like 1 bug with 4 ways to exploit it. That's pretty darn unusual.
I would call that a bad bug. Yeah, that's
yeah.
to use a technical term.
Yes, I would no. I'd one up you. I'd say more than bad. It's probably horrible.
Well, I don't know. There's probably exploits that have worse than that. It's like there's 15 different ways to exploit.
Yeah. Yep. Oh boy. Oh, so for this final exploit, we're going to switch things up a bit and move on to a real world target, the version of WAPD shipped on the Netgear Wax 206. Interesting. And it actually had ASLR, NX, and full railrow and stack cookies enabled on this.
Wow.
Interesting. Huh.
That's if you like this kind of thing, it's a great story to look at because on this blog they actually have all the source code, and if you're interested in the C code for how these kind of exploits are exploited, they have all that code.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which I mean, some people don't like that or don't want to read C code, and other people are like, C code, sign me up.
C code with full exploit code, yeah.
But basically, it boils down to, because they can corrupt and overflow all these memory locations using different approaches, that means they could conceptually inject other code into those memory locations. Because if you are, and I know most of the listeners are on top of all this, but if you're one of those that aren't, and we're always happy to have everyone, if you aren't, basically what that means is you have an address in memory, and if you could cause that to overflow, meaning it reads beyond the end of that space, it may start reading something in another space, thinking it continues. And then that means you could put code in that space, and you're basically tricking a valid, legitimate application into executing a bunch of other code. So it's a very interesting problem. Ask your C instructor if you're one of those people. You'll probably hear more about it than you ever wanted to. But
and then they'll tell you to go write it in Rust because it's memory.
And that's exactly what they'll tell you. Now, as I have said very vehemently on another program, there is no bad C code. There's just bad C coders. If you write your C code correctly, you won't have these problems. But the reason the advocacy of Rust has become so strong is it won't allow you to do some of this stuff. So it's kind of like saying, do you really want to turn people loose with these loaded weapons, or do you want to give them, say, some weapons that have some controls around them? And part of me says, well, I don't want you telling me what I can and can't do. But at the same time, being also amongst all you sloppy coders, one of the best. I'm sure we've all written bad code, and if we can't write bad code, maybe we won't. We certainly won't. But with C, as I've told, I don't know how many students since the 1980s. I don't know how many students I've told, you can do anything with C, and C giveth and C taketh away. And and it does. And I mean, you can write good code with C. It's not a flaw in C that they're pointing out.
Right.
They're not saying C itself has a problem. It's just the coders and the way they use C, because it is so powerful. You can write bad code that is very, very vulnerable to all these kinds of things. And it's kind of like the race cars my brother used to build, which he would drive on the street, versus my dad's Chevrolet Impala. One is perfectly safe and known. The other one may explode, fall apart, or get you arrested. And
one has a certain set of rules in which this automobile.
The other one's a lot more fun, but hey, you probably won't die tonight.
Yeah, live fast, die young, and leave a good-looking corpse, right?
Exactly. Although in that case, you probably wouldn't be very good looking.
Well,
just be a greasy spot of bubbling goo.
Yes, most likely. Yeah, most likely. I mean, it's a great way to go, though.
Hitting a bridge piling at, like, say, 200 miles per hour, you probably won't feel much.
Nope.
And like a bug on a windshield.
Yeah, you know what the last thing it went through its mind was, right?
It's
ass.
I'm a piece of steel.
No, it says ass. I say that to my kids all the time. You're going down the highway and a bug hits the windshield. Hey, you know what the last thing that went through his mind was? Like, what, Dad? His ass.
My brother put me on a motorcycle one time with him, two adult males, and I was looking over his shoulder and I saw 200 on the speedometer, and I was like, if we hit a piece of gravel, we will skid for 3 counties before we finally hit a stationary object and explode into a big puddle.
Uh-huh.
And I was
Mhm.
like, that wasn't the wind screaming in your ear.
Yeah, exactly.
He was like, oh, come on, man, it was fun.
I mean, yeah, but still.
Yeah, I was like, it would have been more fun if I'd been driving.
Nice.
It's not that I don't trust you, but now can you build me one?
Nice.
But
Nice.
yeah, that's been my gripe with the C stories about, that C is a problem. And I'm like, it's not C, it's the coders, but if you put the safety rails around it, and I do understand the recommendation to switch to Rust, but switching to Rust is a big deal.
It is.
Going to your 100 devs or 50 devs or even one dev and saying no more C. Because I remember those days. I remember Fortran to C, and I know what happened when you went down there. I goes, you know what we're going to do? No more Fortran. And it was like, you'll take my Fortran compiler when you pry it from my cold dead fingers.
Yep.
And you're like, we're going to be prying it from your cold dead fingers. Sorry.
Yeah, your cold dead fingers can go work somewhere else.
Yeah, the compiler is not going to be rented any longer, and so it will no longer work. So therefore, you will either do C or you will be
convert or die.
Yeah, convert or die. And again, the same thing.
No one expects a Spanish Inquisition.
No one expects the buffer overflow in C till it shows up.
Speaking of no one expects it, I read this article. I saw this article, and I was like, really? Which is kind of why, like in the intro, I had this as a question.
Pseudo IP tables.
A journey from pseudo IP tables to local privilege escalation. I'm like, really? You have pseudo.
If you have pseudo, it's over anyway.
Exactly. And that was exactly what their kind of argument was. But exactly, like, as the reader might already well know, the sudo command can be used to run a command with the permissions of another user, which is commonly root. So what's the point? You can do sudo command already. Privilege escalation is complete. And their answer is, well, yes, but actually no. In fact, there are two scenarios that they state in which sudo may in fact require the password of the user.
Normally, yeah.
Yep. And well, sometimes you can configure it with no password.
Unless you're a higher level user or you misconfigured it.
Or configured it in
just like the C problem.
You can't tell me what to do, right?
That's the same thing as the C problem. If you've done this up wrong,
yep,
you get what you deserve.
Yep. The other option is that you can appropriately configure sudo to only allow certain commands to be run with sudo. And that's
what you should be doing.
Exactly. So their point is, if you're in one of those scenarios where you either need the user's password or you need the commands that you can run are restricted, this with pseudo IP tables could allow you to get local privilege escalation to be able to run other commands.
How does that work?
It's a great question. So effectively, what they ended up having to do was to be able to use a whole bunch of functions within IP tables to get it to read and write from files. Specifically, they were talking about using pseudo IP tables and just using IP tables for the sudoers file, and using the IP tables save command.
Okay.
To put content within the loaded rules to be able to write it out to extra other files. Yep. So using the comment functionality offered by IP tables to attach arbitrary contents containing new lines to rules, and then leverage IP tables save to dump to a sensitive file the content of the loaded rules, including the commented payloads. So if you put some stuff in some of the comments, so they're adding some rules, and then they've got a comment here to allow packets to localhost and so forth. But if you escape that rule with a new line and put it on the second line, you could then take that, use IP table save, and write that out to a separate file, which then that comment is on a separate new line. So if you've got some stuff with new line, you could start potentially creating IP tables rules with comments on a separate line and writing those to etc password. Yep.
That's clever.
So the example they give here is what they're giving the next rule was on a next line was
A
an
new route.
actual
Yeah.
new route. Uh, uh,
I mean, it's like a file redirect. I mean, it's just literally no. That's very clever. I mean, I mean that is the kind of like old school hacking stuff that I think we all
Totally.
enjoy a great deal, because that was the stuff people did for years on and yeah, in writing a new root user
Yep.
with a password.
Yeah, but not a known password, right?
That's just yeah, I like that a lot. I'm gonna definitely put that one in my notebook.
Like, yeah, like I read that article, read the title of the article, and I'm like, really, really, all right. What AI wrote this article about getting privilege escalation from pseudo IP tables? Game over. And then
When I first saw it, I was like you. I thought that sounds stupid. I mean, if I'm pseudo, I'm pseudo.
right,
So
and
what?
they got me, and I'm like, this article is so stupid. I got to go read this.
Yeah,
And sure enough,
I like that a lot.
it's a real valid thing.
It
Like,
is.
oh,
Now we just have to have ChatGPT 4.0 write a script to do it all, or write the script ourselves and let's be
yep.
badass about it. Like, no ChatGPT for me. I'll write this baby in shell script,
Yep.
which I do like to do, mind you.
Yes. Yes. All right. What else have we got?
I always I teach the shell scripting class, and I'm always just it's always fun when students like start learning that stuff and they go, "Wow, this is really useful." You're like, "You
Yeah.
think?"
Yeah. Some of my best work is in shell scripts.
Yeah,
Right?
or even PowerShell. I mean, people are just like, "I didn't realize you could do all this," and like you could just pretty much automate anything. And I'm like, "Yeah, those function keys."
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. They can do things. More than just pressing buttons. Yeah. Oh
That's
gosh.
a good one. I'm definitely gonna. That one's a good one to put in your notebook of fun things to fiddle around with
Yep.
and on your own stuff. In that same light, then,
Yeah.
how about Honkai Star Rails?
What?
Yeah. So this one is another one of those sort of classic hacking kind
Okay.
of things where it's a side loaded DLL, and
Uh-huh.
and it's also to me kind of in that realm of bad coding at the same time, because one of the oldest hack kind of things that I remember was seeing programs that were running on say servers and even mainframes, that when they ran, just to explain how this works, that they reached out and pulled data out of other files,
Sure.
and now in some cases these were very specific, and
Mhm.
it said load file X and file Y and file Z. So one of the early hacks, of course, was replacing file X with a different file X.
With file X plus plus.
And if the program wasn't very good, and it didn't have, back then they didn't have things like certificates, it just loaded,
Yep.
and you could put a whole other program in there. But
Yep.
then even worse than that is when they have code that reads a whole directory. And this was an old gaming hack, it was an old server hack, was finding a directory folder where they had libraries being loaded or something like that, and instead of loading them by name, or they would just say load star.
Everything in this directory.
Yeah, and so I could put anything in that directory. And so in this case, they did that to a game,
Ah.
and they put a DLL in with the game. So the game itself is perfectly legitimate, but
Yep.
when the exe file starts running on your device, it runs all the DLLs, and it just so happens it can run other DLLs, and that DLL that got run basically then can download malware onto your device.
Mhm. So similar, they had one with the 3CX teleconference software.
Yes.
Was it last year? They said in the article, and they
Yep.
3CX just had another one show up a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
And I don't think it was the DLL sideloading one,
Mhm.
but 3CX has been.
But that was one of the original DLL sideloading attacks that
Yep.
people started reporting on. But it's a big deal, and honestly, I don't even know how you really defend against some of this stuff, because this all comes back to the SBOM problem
Yep.
of I install something, I don't know how it works, it may be proprietary, I can't even see how it works, and maybe it was written by bad C coders.
Mm-hmm.
I have no control over that, and therefore, who knows what it's going to do. And so this was and this is certainly a good gateway to get people. I've never played this game. I don't even know what it is, but
Yeah,
um,
which I think is kind of interesting because in the article, there's a stock photo from Adobe in here that shows Honkai Star Rail being executed on. It looks like Android.
I think
Yeah,
this was an Android. Yeah,
it's
this
Android,
attack was an Android attack.
but it says throughout the the stuff that it's starrail.exe, and it sounds like Windows.
Well, I know
And,
all
and if
that.
it's DLL side loading,
Will that run on an Android? I don't know.
I have no
I've
idea.
never looked at how Android runs things.
Yeah, I don't.
I
It's
don't have an Android, so.
me either.
But this whole thing was really weird. The story was strange because basically what it loads is this thing called Cransom, and it does encrypt things apparently. But the ransom note redirected people back to the game manufacturer.
Oh,
And so I don't know if this is just like an attack on the game manufacturer, and they're just like somebody's mad because their game didn't work the way they wanted it to, or and it's one of those kind of things like that. Again, very old school kind of hacking stuff. I'm mad at you, so I'm going to do stuff to you, because it didn't seem to have like an ability to actually unransom your device.
Yep.
It's just they want lots of people calling this company going, hey, you ransomwared my phone, how do I unlock it?
Denial of service type of thing.
Because it was a real simple ransom. Apparently, it's like an XOR or something.
Yeah,
so
it says it
seems
uses
like
it uses XOR with an encoder key of hex AA.
Yeah,
like that's not a very long key to start.
No, that's a very, very short key.
And
8-bit key. You should be able to break an 8-bit key pretty quick.
And I wish Jeff were here, because we get on a whole thing about whether XOR is actually considered encryption or not.
Yeah,
it's more what, obfuscation than anything else. Or
but and again, I can argue with Jeff for hours on end, and have in freezing cold sheds in Wyoming. Or actually, it was in South Dakota, Jeff, but he brought a bunch of good whiskey, so it was fine. But to me, anything that encrypts and obfuscates is encryption. It may be really bad encryption, but to me that is still encryption. It's just not very good encryption.
ROT13 twice is still encryption.
Exactly.
Just not very good encryption.
Not encryption you want to use, but Jeff may have other opinions, but and I can't imagine Jeff having a different opinion.
I can't imagine Jeff having opinions, right? Period. Oh my goodness.
But I just interjected that story
because
it seemed relevant.
It's all good. Let's do a little jump over to some Wi-Fi stuff here. So first one, we in the spool up we talk about a new Wi-Fi password cracking tool. In this case, is FT Crack. This one was kind of interesting. It came out of a need to potentially have some capability for recovering passwords from pre-shared key networks, in this new method where is it? It is fast BSS transition, or FT, is included. So you're doing a fast transition between access points so that you do not have to have recalculate keys when you roam. The keys are already pre-calculated, and there's a little bit of different math that happens when you determine your new key material when fast transition is enabled. When you do your initial one, it uses pseudo PRF 512, or a pseudo randomization function with HMAC SHA-1. And some of the new stuff, they actually went with BSS fast transition on. It uses, I think it was SHA-256, with some specific static kings, RO key derivation, static strings, and FTR1. KDF-256 was one of them that they used.
I saw SHA-256 in there too.
Yep. Short description of how keys are generated: KDF-384, KDF-256, SHA-256, and so forth. So there's a couple of different ways, a couple of different iterations that it goes through to get there. But so by pulling apart WPA supplicant to figure out how all that was calculated, they effectively created a new tool to go and recalculate that key material based on devices that now do a fast transition, an access point fast transition. So they wanted to be able to have this tool in their arsenal as part of this Wi-Fi CTF, and they found that no tools existed that could actually implement this attack. So here we are, darling. There's now these new tools that can generate the keys for those network. They didn't actually end up even needing to use it at the DEF CON wireless CTF for whichever CTF that they were playing here. But they like, all right, well, now we didn't even use it, and a little time has passed since DEF CON, so why don't we make it a little bit prettier and make sure it actually works? And here you go. Here's some tools.
Wow.
Yep.
That's a really nice tool.
Yeah.
You should have that in your toolkit.
Yes, we should. So yeah, we're updating the Sans Wireless class. So, but
who knows? Maybe they'll invite me to come for free again.
Maybe
I've been to a few of them for free. They used to like me, but they don't anymore.
Yeah, no comment. It's not about you, Doug. It's not about you. It's totally not about you. Okay. All right. So the other one that I thought was absolutely freaking terrifying was an article in the IEEE by using Wi-Fi and something called open Wi-Fi, and I don't think they mean open access points, but effectively using Wi-Fi signals in an area, and how they reflect off of humans, with a monostatic multi-antenna Wi-Fi setup to do contactless breathing rate measurement. So by using Wi-Fi signals in the environment, they could detect your respiration rate. What?
Wow.
And with multiple users, multiple occupants in the environment. So if they put two individuals in a hospital room, they could detect the individual breathing rates for the two individuals with a 0.61 average error breaths 0.61 error breaths per minute. Like half a breath per minute error rate.
Wow. That's nutty.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm a little overwhelmed with that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the IEEE. But
I do, but I'm not logged into it here.
Yeah, no.
I have it at home. I'll get it later, and if you may well, if you have the link, you may well have access to that if your organization or your school or anything else has IEEE membership. So
yeah, and only 96 people have read this article, which is kind of terrifying. Like,
it's IEEE.
I mean, agreed.
I mean, you start thinking about how many people would actually understand this article.
I mean,
but the abstract is cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is interesting idea. I mean, I'm not sure if I should be terrified of it. So it's like they know we're in here now, Larry. It's like they know there's just two of us. So.
And they know that we're alive.
Yeah.
And they know whether we're excited or not.
Uh-oh.
Uh-huh. They know whether we're breathing heavy or not, Doug. No. And you tie this with some of the other things that they've done with Wi-Fi, that by doing some mapping about how the human body absorbs 2.4 gigahertz energy, and some of the Wi-Fi signals, they're actually able to do mapping with another project of human bodies in a room through a wall, because of if your body is in the way of a Wi-Fi signal, they were actually able to detect the slight variances in signal strength.
Yeah, they call that a void, right? Is
yeah,
that how they measure that?
Pretty much.
Like
pretty much.
Void in the signal, and the other side would show you how many people are standing there blocking the signal.
Yep.
Now I'm hearing black helicopters overhead. Actually, I'm not hearing them. That's what's worrying me. Those really quiet ones that are just kind of hovering up there, following me home tonight.
They're already at your home, Doug.
Yeah, they probably are.
They don't need to follow you.
They've already got my Wi-Fi compromised, and they're just monitoring what I'm doing.
They already know where you are.
Like, why is this guy aroused by C code? There's something wrong with him.
And we can tell he's aroused because we can tell he's breathing heavy, and he's in the room.
Either that, or it's just because I'm so bad out of shape.
Oh. Hey! Round is a shape.
Like I tried to sit up, and then it was like,
Oh my goodness. Oh, Doug, your phone's 5G icon and the signal bars are lying to you. I mean,
I just threw that one in there because I think that's one of those things people. I mean, it's just kind of a fun story, but it's true. Because your phone says like 5G doesn't mean you have 5G. It just means there's 5G in the area.
that's interesting.
It doesn't mean that your phone is actually opted to use
Oh.
5G. It just means that it's detected a 5G network somewhere that your
Huh.
phone may actually be optimizing and using LTE or who knows what. And I
Interesting.
mean, and part of me is like, okay, so what? That's good. That's good coding, because why waste? Why do you need 10 megabit networking when you're basically using a command line interface
Oh.
to, a Linux server running on an Intel 4004?
Yep.
You don't. And so the phones theoretically, I'm not an expert on this, but the phones technically would, use whatever they needed to use. But
Interesting.
the article's kind of like, yeah, but they're basically marketing to you that, you're always on 5G with us, even if you're actually not. And then the service bars,
Shady.
yeah, it's a little shady. And the service bars are not actually reflective of the signal strength either. It was just saying that they're kind of like that Microsoft timer. And
Oh yeah, the gray bar land, right? When you're doing the
yeah.
installer and it says it will be 3 minutes to install.
Well, long, long ago, I had a class in Redmond that I was teaching, and Michael Howard was in the class, who wrote some of the early Windows operating systems. And
Uh-huh.
I asked him about that, and he was like, "Yeah, we got to keep everybody from calling," you know, because I mean, we all know now that those timers are just nonsense and they're
Yep.
totally ridiculous. And I think the service bars aren't really reflective. I mean, they're probably a general guideline, but not anything that you should put too much weight on.
Yeah.
So you may be streaming, heavy streaming with one bar, and it's just as good as when it shows 5
5
bar. I
bars.
see that all the time. And I also see my phone with 3 bars going, why is it got a problem right now?
Yep. Yep.
So I think some of that's just marketing and the people who designed the UI going like, we got to tell them something.
Yep.
And there's some concerns. And yeah, I mean, like how many bars? Like
I-
right now, my phone has 2 bars and it says
Wow.
LTE.
Oh, okay.
Oh, back to 5G.
Oh, mine doesn't say 5G or LTE at all, but I only have 1 bar.
Yeah, well, you're screwed. So I'm better than you, and I feel better. Yeah,
You should.
yeah.
You should.
I got the big one. It's a 5G baby.
Which is irony. I don't know why mine doesn't show 5G. But, huh? Maybe
Yeah, I mean, I've always suspected that some of that stuff was just sort of,
it's smoke and
silly.
mirrors.
Yeah,
Smoke and
and,
mirrors.
I mean, if I was coding it, I would probably do something like that.
Yeah. And I the part of the reason why I wanted to make sure we brought this one up, like I can remember when 4G was the next big thing.
Oh,
Say,
get on
I
4G, yeah.
I think we covered the same article.
Mhm.
I think when 3G and
probably.
3GPP, we probably covered the same article, and even 2G. I think we even covered a very similar article back in the day.
Well, I mean, it's like home networking. They always have to sell you something, and
Yes.
it's always the next bigger, faster thing. Even when I've had people call me, like Soho type people, call me saying, our whole house is running on 100 megabits. You think, this guy was looking at it and said, it would really improve our service if we upgraded to a gig. And I'm like, what kind of service are you trying to improve? And they're like, well, like our internet is slow. And I'm like, yeah, I said, what are you doing in your house that you need 100 megabits? How many
Yeah.
people live there?
Yeah.
Like thousands.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, no, it's just the 3 of us, and like, sometimes 2 of us are using the Facebook at the same time. And you're like, yeah, you're not using 100 megabits. Your
No.
internet and upgrading your internal network is not going to help this one bit. Let me tell you right now.
I mean, I'll tell you right now, like, yeah, absolutely. I have some older Wi-Fi gear in the house for us because it does exactly what we need it to.
Mhm.
It does 100 megabit wireless networking. We've got enough distributed access points in the house that pretty much everybody's got their own access point. Maybe 2 people on an access point. And the TV is streaming, 4K video, and the kids are watching YouTube on their phones at 1080p or something like that, and it's not slow. Not slow at all, and we only have 75 up, 75 down. Like that's where our bottleneck is at the internet provider.
Yeah,
And like why do I need to upgrade to Wi-Fi 6E to get gig
and
to
you
gig
probably don't. I mean, if you're a
right?
Soho user and you're not doing something extraordinary, I mean, you really wouldn't need that.
Right. I mean, like the only time I'd ever use it would be like, oh, I need to download a ISO from, excuse me, from somewhere to do this install and or something, or oh, I just need to back up all this like 7 terabytes worth of firmware images to my NAS.
Yeah.
Okay, that how often does that happen? Like maybe 7 or 8 times a year. Guess what? That's what the weekend is for.
Well, yeah, and I will say, I mean, we all have that same problem because I use a multi-stage backup approach
Mhm.
where there's an internal NAS that's hardwired in the network.
Yep.
And so that one is the fastest one, and that one's done on a daily basis. But then, cloud-based stuff is done on a, occasional basis. And yeah, that's pretty slow. But honestly, it's not my internal network that's slowing it down.
Right.
And I mean, I do have gig and I don't need it. I mean, I monitor all the time and I would be just fine. This is totally directed at Soho people. If you're enterprise, that's a whole different problem.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I mean, Soho people, I'm like, look, when your equipment wears out and breaks, that's probably when you should replace it.
Yep.
Don't let some salesperson convince you that you need a new router that costs $900 because that'll speed things up. Because if your provider is not giving you any up down or you're getting throttled or your up down is 10 megabits or something, you can buy all the gigabit appliances you want. But if it's the internet side, it's going to be whatever you're paying your provider for.
Yep.
It has nothing to do with
it's probably your 8-year-old desktop PC that is the problem.
Well, that could be too. Yeah.
Yeah.
8. Wow, that's pretty new.
Yeah, exactly. Or your as my my oldest would say, Dad, my computer's really slow. I'm like, why is it slow? Like, what are you doing with it? I'm like, oh, I'm playing like Minecraft or something like that, and it's really slow. And like, what? Oh, right. That was I got that for you 6 years ago. Oh, I get it now.
Yeah, I fished some out of Lou's house that were running Windows 98, and I was like, "What should I do with this?" It's like straight to the dump.
Yeah, well, straight to the electronics recycler. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that of course in that location it was the dump,
but right.
But anyway, I mean, it was just an interesting story that I saw about the phone, and it made me remember being a coder and having marketing or somebody coming down there and going, could you do this with it? And you're going, why? What would be the point of that? It's going to waste bandwidth. And they're just like, yeah, but could you just do it for me? Like a little thing that shows that something's happening so people won't call. Like, oh,
as
does
opposed
it matter if it's accurate? And like, no, just make it flutter or something.
Yeah, just make that little circle go around.
There you go, like a little hourglass spinning, and it says, "Yeah, please wait." And
I had that happen today. I was looking at something on Amazon, and I'm like, that's pretty fascinating. How does that work? And they have videos of showing people using it. And I go to the video tab for in the review section, and like spin. I'm like, oh god, like is my browser like refresh the page, close my browser, reopen all my tabs, thinking maybe the browser and spin. I'm like,
and there's a lot of moving parts in that operation.
Yeah,
I mean that are not just local. I mean that's
yeah,
your computer, your network, your border, your provider's network, the web server, stuff on the web server,
wherever it's getting it from.
And yeah, the web server may be pulling that video in from
China,
third party.
From China. It was clear. It was definitely some Chinese based product. So it could have been the video probably wasn't hosted at Amazon. It was probably hosted somewhere else on this low end web server for this cheap Chinese manufacturer and so forth. And I'm so to the point that I'm like, oh, I'm not going to wait for this. And I switched over to another tab and started doing something else. And all of a sudden, like 10 minutes later, like there's sound coming out of my speakers. I'm like, what the hell? And I'm like looking for what tab, and sure enough, the video had loaded and I could see how this thing actually worked. It was actually pretty neat. And I bought one. So don't worry, it's not network connected. So,
a couple of the stories I put up about more IoT.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, which one?
Any of them. I sort of put them in by the way I saw them, and then
All right,
I
not
immediately.
your number one. Threat actors continue to exploit OT and ICS through unsophisticated means.
Yeah, so
No
this
shit.
actually came out from.
This might be one of those no shit Sherlock types of stories, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is, and it really is a no shit Sherlock kind of story, because this is CISA
And it's from
basically telling
CISA.
us what we all knew all along, which is that a lot. I mean, I don't know about you, but I used to do audits which are now called pen tests
Yep.
on a lot of industrial stuff,
Mhm.
and the standard response from the ICS people was, we aren't a threat because nobody knows how our stuff works, and it's so obscure it should be fine. And I always just immediately cringed when I heard this, because
Security through obscurity.
well, yeah, and that's one of my most hated things in the world, is security through obscurity. And at the time this was going on, it was kind of true.
Yep.
I mean, it's an obscure system that was home rolled, that was written by in-house coders back in the 1970s. It's not connected to any networks. Nobody can get to it unless they actually go down there, hit Sid in the head with a hammer, and then sit down at that one HMI station
Mhm.
that is for that system. And and they're like, and Sid's got a gun.
And fast forward 5 years, they plug it in to an Ethernet interface, which is connected
Yes.
to
And then spin that forward even a few more years to the pandemic, and they said, Sid can't be here.
right.
And oh yeah, he died anyway. And the two
Sid's,
people,
Sid's replacement.
yeah, the two people that replace Sid are going to need to work from home. So we're going to actually put a connection from the border to this HMI,
Yep.
and it runs Telnet. And
If you're lucky.
if you're lucky, yeah, it's not an R login or something fun like that. But yeah, and then all of a sudden, all these devices that were out there became exposed.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, especially during the pandemic, did not have the time or the ability to go in and build private VLANs and isolate these networks the way they should have. And as we all know, once something is working, it tends to not get messed with, because when you go to the powers that be and say, we'd like to go in here and tear this all down this weekend and fix it the way it's supposed to be, it's like, is it working?
Yeah.
Well, it
Do
is.
I have to pay you overtime to do this?
Yeah. Well, but CISA has issued this alert, especially about the water and wastewater system.
Yeah. So, and it's funny when we're talking about you're talking about some of the others about all of these failures. Like, I'm like thinking like energy, but all that stuff is regulated by NERC and all this type of stuff. So they actually do a fairly decent job about a lot of the stuff. But wastewater, where's that regulated by?
I mean, it's the EPA. They're more worried about what you're dumping in the river than they are about any of the tech stuff.
Yep.
And apparently these things are being heavily targeted. And I don't know if that's because they're the lowest hanging fruit now, and I mean, remember, all this stuff's interconnected.
Yep.
So water and wastewater is connected to 3 Mile Island because they use water, they generate wastewater, and they probably have to connect in. And as we see these things continue, and it won't be long, I presume, before they're slapping detectors on your water system if they haven't already, because if you have city water, you probably have a either RFID readable meter or a Wi-Fi enabled meter.
Yep.
I mean,
or Zigbee or something. Yeah. Or something.
Or whatever, so they can drive through your neighborhood. But a lot of them are even switching like cellular and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Which means
LoRa, cellular, you name it.
If somebody got in that network, they may be able to get in your business. They may be able to get in. But I mean, this was more about them targeting switches, valve controllers, and all this kind of stuff, which has been this long-standing sort of fear thing. But CISA is actually saying, you might want to worry about this a little bit. And they're saying that you should use this defending OT operations against ongoing pro-Russia hacktivist activity, which is very specific. It's not just like defending your OT. It's like against ongoing pro-Russia hacktivist activity. So now you're being targeted, not just by, some 12-year-old kid in Persephone, but you're being targeted by pro-Russian hacktivists, which are probably
Russian.
GRU.
Russians.
Fancy bear.
Right, yeah.
And so it's pretty scary. And at that same time, there was another story that I put right on the tail of that, which was about this. There was a Kansas water plant that forced them. Now, this is an interesting story to me, because long ago, so this was in 1997, a news program contacted me in another faraway state and asked me if I'd be willing to come on and talk about the gas company and Y2K.
In a galaxy long ago.
Yeah. Well, what this reporter wanted me to say was that, it's going to be like, kablamo! We all die. The whole world shuts down. And I wouldn't say that. So my segment didn't really get aired because they found some janitor who would. But in the process of doing this, me and the reporter actually went to a gas company and got them to take us down in the like creepy tunnels and, old guys named Bill who've got monkey wrenches over their shoulders
Sid.
saying, I can show you how it works. Because the question I asked Bill was, what would happen if this Y2K thing shut down your ICS ITOT front end for the system?
Yeah, which was fancy names back in the day because they called it something else.
And and he's like, well, I'd take this wrench, go down there in this tunnel and turn the valve. That's all there is to it. And I was like, okay. And the reporter, of course, didn't like this. And then they, of course, went and found some janitor who went, I don't know, man. I'm going to head for the hills. I was like, oh my God. And, because that was what they wanted to air. But, a lot of water treatment and stuff like this. And I've done a few things with water processing facilities, and they did have manual controls. But there's a huge problem. Bill is dead.
Yep.
He died of old age down in the tunnels back in, 03. And one of the things when I was looking at this later, and it was very interesting, and I've seen this in other contexts as well, was when you ask these audit type questions for you, because one of our processes was to ask questions and say, okay, here's what just happened. It's like a tabletop.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's your first call? Because this is always one of my questions. What's your first call? And they'll be like, okay, I'm going to call Steve. I'm like, who is Steve? Let's call him. And then they pick it up and go, is Steve there? And the answer literally on this question was, Steve retired like 7 years ago. And they're like, well, who's doing Steve's job now? He wasn't replaced after that. The techs are we outsourced that. And they're like, who did you outsource it to? I'm not exactly sure. And
yep.
So one of the concerns with the water was that a lot of the old-fashioned stuff that they did, like dumping chemicals and turning valves with monkey wrenches and all this stuff that Bill was doing, has been a lost skill, even though it's still conceptually possible.
It's crazy.
But who does it? And it's like, Bill? I mean, I actually did a response job for, it wasn't water, but it was a different entity. And we ended up finding solutions to this written in the fly leaves of old books on the equivalent of Bill's shelf. Bill was also dead.
Yes.
And nobody knew what to do because this one guy had died. I mean, he just keeled over, and nobody knew how to get any of this stuff running. They didn't even know how to get into it. They're just like, he takes care of it. He's been taking care of it since like the 90s. And they're like, so what do we do? And we're like, I have no idea what we can do with this. I don't even want to touch it, because if we touch it, it may all quit working, and I don't even know what it is. And it's just like,
don't touch that. You don't know what it's connected to.
Yeah. And
great movie.
And it's and it's totally proprietary. But this one was a really small water system in Arkansas City, Kansas,
But is it Arkansas or is it Kansas? Like, can you make up your mind? Like, Jesus, I'm not.
Yeah, I know. But this was another story that reinforced that basically what was happening was they said in their official statement they were experiencing issues with some pumps, and they warned the residents that there may be low water pressure, and they're trying to solve the problems. But this basically said that this was hit. They keep saying it was hit, and that they're being targeted. And so just before you say this doesn't concern me, these entities are going after connected things.
Yep.
And if they can get in the water department, which may well be connected to some other safety department or to the electric department, they may be able to come in through that pipeline, or they can just cause total chaos. Because I've always said that if I was getting ready to do something, turning all those stoplights green in New York City would be a pretty interesting way to start.
Yep.
I mean, or just shutting off all the electricity. I mean, people get real panicky after about, 20, 30 hours of no electricity and your phone's not working and, and so forth. And I know some of you off the grid types are well prepared for the coming oblivion, but most of the rest of us are just going to run into the. I've got a shotgun shell on a hammer in the back room for me. So it's just kind of like, yeah, problem solved. It's over. I won't last 12 minutes when I have to survive on my own. I mean, I know Larry can make his own knives and skin wild elk. And
I have a shotgun shell and a hammer, but it doesn't point towards me. It points at
no,
someone
mine's
else, right?
just for one simple purpose. It's just called. I don't even want to fool with this. It just sounds like way too much trouble.
It's a lot of work.
It's
too much work.
I'll let you whittle things out of antlers and stuff, and then survive in the wild.
Yep. And you think about this, like, we're kind of joking about the turning the going into the apocalypse, right? But like, if we think about this, the attack was allegedly pointed. No, sorry. The EPA is talking about Russian cyber criminals targeting these types of systems. And you do this and you force this little small city in Cowley County, Kansas, Arkansas City, and you force them to go to manual operation with Bill, who's dead, and all of those types of things. But why would you do it there?
Well, I have a theory.
I do too.
Well, I'll let you do yours. I've been yakking forever.
To prove it works.
That was my theory too. Was
prove
like,
it works.
I already know that little water. I don't know about this one, but I know that little water system down in Four Corners, Texas, uses the same architecture and weird proprietary stuff that's used by, say, Chicago.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to.
Maybe not New York City, but in a moderately sized, maybe Providence.
Yeah, and I don't want to waste my ammo testing
on Providence.
Yeah, because then they'll shore it up.
Yeah.
But if I could test it in Arkansas City, Cowley County, Kansas, I learned something. No, I'm 100% with you. That was exactly my theory. Because that's what I would be doing.
Yep. Proof of concept.
I mean, if I was a bad guy and I was working for other bad guys and they asked me to, I need you to be able to do this. I need you when the balloon goes up, as they used to say in the Cold War.
Yep.
When we say we're about to invade Taiwan, and we want as much chaos as possible going on at home so that people don't have time to sort of mobilize their outrage towards what we're doing, or we're invading, I don't know, Estonia. Or I was in Finland this summer and I was going, you see way off in the distance right there? That's Russia. Sure. And,
you can see it from your house.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I know. But in this case, it was actually true. It wasn't actually true. It was about 60 miles away. But I was like, the Russian border is 60 miles down this road, and I don't want to drive any closer. I think we're good right here. But I mean, if I was going to do that, that's exactly what I would want, because that kind of back end chaos means you're redirecting efforts in the wrong direction, and whether it's power, water, or any kind of infrastructure stuff. And I really think people will go absolutely nuts, because we've seen it.
Oh, yeah.
With hurricanes and things like that, where people did not have access to resources or information, and they get really worked up now. Yep. I mean, really, really worked up.
Yeah. I mean, what was the one we had in New England with the power outage in New York City?
Sandy.
No, it was because it was a power transmission something. The multiple failures of the grid for New England, and surprisingly, it went pretty well.
Yeah.
But this was in the pre-smartphone days.
Oh.
So like, communication, you were getting your communications through other methods,
waiting for the New York Times to arrive in the morning.
Hell, everybody tuned into the radio to find out what was going on. Like, now how do you get your information? Like, you pick up your cell phone.
And if that's not there, because the Hurricane Sandy was an example. I had some friends who live in Queens, and they said the police were driving through the neighborhood and going,
speakers,
please go to the following website to find your escape route. You must evacuate now. And he said, we jump on our phones and we pull up the website, and it's like 404. The website was down because so many people were hitting it.
Yep.
And he said, we didn't really know what to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that would be pretty terrifying. And I think we're reaching that kind of critical, scary situation, because I know when everything falls apart, I'm going to Larry's house.
We are not reaching it. We have reached it.
We're past it. I mean, we're well at the point where if information fails, and I mean, if you combine all those things and the toilet won't flush and your phone's not working to tell you why the toilet won't flush.
Yep.
And people are going to get really freaked out. And that would be exactly what I would be doing if I was trying to prep like that's my first strike. I don't need a nuclear weapon.
It's a test.
I'm going to put you in on, on your back foot, as they say, just right out of the gate
Yep.
before, I do something else.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
get you focused.
And yeah, but we've seen so many of the post-apocalyptic scenarios that's exactly it. You put them on your back foot, you leave them there for a couple weeks, you let everything degrade, you let them take each other out, and then you go in and you take over when everybody's nice and weak.
Well, I didn't
Like-
agree with a lot of the stuff Jordan said about Y2K, but I did agree with him saying that if we don't have food on the shelves, electricity, and water, it won't be very long before everybody's, running around with machetes, cannibalizing each other.
Yep.
And I'm like, and he's right. I agreed with that. I
Yep.
mean, it's a very scary scenario for a lot of people. But I guess the point of all these articles this week was, look, water systems are very distributed. They're not giant conglomerates that are run from central sources in one place. So every community may have their own water department. And you as people that live in these places out there may want to go look at some of this and offer to help. Even, I mean, we were doing that years ago in Rhode Island, and we did a bunch of work with the Providence Water Department with some exercises and things to try to get them up to speed. This was back in like '05 or something when we were first doing this stuff. But I mean, there are resources, but if you are in the water industry, you are being targeted. If you're not, you may want to think about how these things affect you, and how they're going to affect your enterprise, how they're going to affect you personally, because I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon. Most of these systems are very, very old, and even if you want to fix them, sometimes it's not that easy. Because I've seen plenty of that where they just go, well, we'd love to get rid of Telnet, but unfortunately we can't.
Right, because in order to do that, we have to replace this gear, and we don't
like,
have any budget
well,
for that.
maybe just change the passwords away from all being Gandalf, and that would help.
Yeah. And Doug, you had one more, the automated tank gauge bugs.
Yeah, this was
Threaten
just
the gap.
another component of this same sort of scary thing, which was about these. There were these. They're putting on all any gas tank now of a certain size, and
Yep.
these are these big ones you see sitting, off the freeway in Newark or whatever. But even smaller ones at like enterprise level stuff are starting to have Wi-Fi, cellular, Bluetooth, Zigbee, whatever enabled gauges, because these gauges are then used to determine if they're leaking,
Yep.
if they may be going to explode, if they've got too much pressure in them,
Yep.
or any of this kind of stuff. And they have these things sitting all over the place. And if these gauges are wrong, that's another case where it could be a very complex problem, because if a gauge is telling somebody to vent when they don't need to vent, and we've seen these kind of attacks on all sorts of nuclear industries and everything else. But this was just another, case of security vulnerabilities in a sensor that is being mounted sometimes by, regulatory requirements on devices that has not been tested thoroughly, that maybe who knows what kind of supply chain issues there are with these things. Because guess where the chips were probably made?
China.
Of course. Where else would they be made? And they probably built the motherboards and maybe built the devices themselves. And it's just every day we see threats to all sorts of IoT stuff from these kind of systems. And a lot of people that are supporting these things don't have good asset management of them either. They don't maybe even know what they have, how many they have, or where they're located. Hopefully that's not you, but I've seen that where they can't even tell me, like on this map, here's all these things marked. And it's like, what is this?
Yep.
And I'm like, it's a substation. I'm like, what's in that substation? I'm like,
Stuff.
Substation stuff. I'm like, can anybody just walk up to this thing? And a few years ago they had these whack jobs that were running around with shotguns shooting like substations and stuff.
Yep.
As some kind of rebellion. And we found out that most of them have almost no security at all, and at best they might have a chain link fence around them with no monitoring, and somebody just comes up and climbs over it. So virtually they're big threats too, because we don't even maybe know what all's out there, and maybe somebody installed something, maybe they didn't install it, who knows. But I was putting these stories up because I think it's important for all of our listeners, in enterprise, to start thinking about not just macro asset management, but micro asset management, because it's a very complicated problem. that ranges from the controller for the camera to valves, HVAC, electrical breakers, telephone
Yep.
systems, and all these things have so many controllers that are microcontrollers that are run off these kind of systems. And as that system sort of bleeds over into this is being managed from afar,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes an even bigger threat. So we've seen electrical industry people saying we only have a single operator for our 36 plants who sits in a room here, like those guys that fly drones, in Afghanistan, and they're
Yep.
sitting in a trailer house in Nevada,
Yep.
and we're doing all that stuff where you're seeing that kind of stuff in this management, which means these things are very threatened and are big, giant, glowing, juicy targets that people are looking at.
Totally. And we bring this back to the apocalypse scenario a little bit there. So I was kind of had to read into this article, the critical automated tank gauge bugs threaten gas infrastructure. And I think what they're actually meaning here for gas medium, meaning petroleum products like actual gasoline.
Yes.
And they say like one of the best places or most obvious is to have these for gas stations.
Yeah.
Where you go to fill up your car and so
They
forth.
have a big reservoir, yeah.
But also for hospitals for managing their backup generators and whether they're leaking.
Farms.
To figure out where and like you have a hospital and the power goes out and the backup generator has been telling you that you have your tanks are topped off and they're full when they're not.
Yeah.
Like back to the put them on their heels when and now the generator has no fuel. And like these ATGs, it is referred to as an automatic tank gauge ATG. That some of the research they found said that we found vanilla reflected cross-site scripting, authentication bypass with direct path access, command injection, hard-coded administrator credentials, arbitrary file read, with direct path traversal access, yearling admin credentials, SQL injection, and access to full SQL error logs. And like OS command injection, hard-coded credentials, authentication bypass, SQL injection, cross-site scripting, privilege exploitation, arbitrary file read on some of these devices. With CVSS between 10 and 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
Most between 10 and 9.4.
Yeah. And I mean, when I looked at these things, a lot of times, just default credentials were standard. They're very commonplace.
Yep. Default credentials. And like the default credentials, great. You can change those.
If you can. I've seen them where you can't.
In the chips. It looks like the Maglink LX4 on this particular one. Hard-coded credentials.
Yeah. And if that's the case, the only thing you can do with these is isolate them on private VLANs and make sure that nobody can get anywhere near the things. And then you turn around and go, well, how's my operator supposed to see this information? Because they're sitting in Nevada.
Yep.
And the factory is in North Carolina. How do they actually see this tank on our ICS system? And it's like you need private VLANs and private VPNs, and nobody can get to that system, and it can't connect to your internet. And they're just like, no.
Yep.
Or it doesn't support that. It's like running 6 low pan or something, and they're like, this is not even connected. Although that would be good, I guess, if it was on a totally old proprietary protocol.
Well, let's really quickly cover one last one, a little bit happier note, because we got to wrap this one up.
Larry didn't expect me to talk so much.
No, it's okay. It's good.
You were warned.
Yep. So this one I thought was kind of fun. From downtown Doug Brown, downtown Julie Brown. What? We grew up in the MTV era. He bought this what was it? Elgato HD60S HDMI captured the device. And it looked like it was broken, so we started playing around with the hardware, finding out what was trying to get hot and you name it, and trying to figure out what the hell was going on with the hardware and what was going on. And turns out it really didn't end up being the hardware that was the problem. He starts pulling firmware and interacting with the device, and ended up using Ghidra to start pulling some of the stuff for the firmware to fix this stuff. Effectively, he had to dump the firmware, debug the firmware, and then put it on a new device, and then resolder it. Like insanity.
Wow,
Yep.
that's a mess.
Yep.
I mean, the quality of a lot of this stuff is really variable too, because a lot of it's manufactured in like, you'll find a district in a city,
Mm-hmm.
and there'll be 800 little storage unit kind of buildings, and there's people sitting in front of every one of them, and the whole family's there making these things. Like I've seen monitors, motherboards,
Yep.
and then that stuff's put onto a truck, and he takes the truck down to this central depot, and somebody buys all these things,
Mm-hmm.
and it may be the same exact thing bought by 14 different companies.
Oh yeah.
And maybe this was the day that little Timmy learned how to solder, or maybe it was Uncle Jit, who was a really good solderer, but you just don't know what you're going to get.
Exactly. Now, arguably, this one was an Elgato device, so maybe a little bit more reputation to some of their devices. But yeah, yeah.
Well, it's a fun story if you like to see bad hardware. This is they got some really good, scary, creepy pictures in this story of disaster stuff, and they've also got all the decompiled code from the chips. So if you like that kind of stuff.
Yep, I love it. I desoldered the SPI flash chip and read it back using a programmer.
Yeah.
I also tried to do it in circuit without removing the chip first, but I didn't have any luck. I even accidentally knocked off a small 1 picofarad decoupling capacitor seen above on the right off the PC board while I was trying to clip onto it.
That sounds like me. That's like something I would do. That would be where I was getting Lou to fix it. I'd be like, Lou, I just broke it. And Lou would be like, oh, hell.
Yep. Turns out it was Cypress using the Cypress SDK that this was running ThreadX RTOS under the hood. Okay.
It's always fun when you see stuff like that.
Yeah.
You go, wow, this is probably really, you go, oh, I know what this is.
Yep. At the very least, I was able to see the Cypress chip send some commands over I2C to the Nuvoton chip. Oh, yep. Good stuff.
That is fun stuff.
Yep.
I wish I had lots more time and better eyesight.
That's why they make microscopes, Doug.
Well, you're right. It is. And I have magnifiers. I was the one that introduced Paul to those head, the full headpiece magnifier.
Yep. I have one of those in my office, and I can literally reach down here and grab it. I have one in the bathroom, and I have one upstairs in the bathroom, just in case you got to get a splinter out. You pull the head mounted magnifiers.
No, they're really handy things, and I've used them many, many times. And now that I got older, I have to use them when I'm working on PCs and stuff, because I can't see the pins anymore. And I'm like, what does that say? I'm like, I need a magnifier, but that's why they sell them with multiple, magnifications.
Wait, I only put the big one.
Oh, you put the maximum.
I put the maximum on.
That's why you keep burning holes and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's been a joke in our house the last couple of days. My wife has been working on some craft stuff. She's like, oh, I can't see this. I've got to go upstairs and get my cheaters. And she wears contacts and all this stuff. Yeah. So she's like, I got to go upstairs and get my cheaters to be able to, magnify this really small, fine work that I'm doing to make this jewelry. And I keep teasing her. I'm like, oh, you're wearing your cheaters? She says, no, they're crafting glasses. And today she was trying to read something on a box, and she had her crafting glasses on her head. And she's like, man, this is really small print. So she put her crafting glasses on, and she starts reading. I'm like, that's not, you got to take those off. You're not working on any crafting stuff.
Yeah, I have to do that now. But I have the headsets with the LEDs and everything. Yep. So it's really nice if you're working on, even I think I wish I'd had that years ago just to work on a PC. But if you're working on chips, if you're working on anything that involves soldering anymore, I have to wear the what should we call the engineering glasses?
Yes, the head-mounted jeweler's loop, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that way I can actually see the pinouts and.
Yep.
Whereas I used to could do that with my Mark 1 eyeball.
I used to could do.
I used to could do it.
Yeah, used to could do it. Yep.
And used to do all my little jumpers and everything. And now I have to magnify the hell out of it.
Yep. Well, Doug, with that note, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
And we had a good time. Hopefully our listeners did too. But it's time to wrap this one up. So, Doug, do me a favor. Take us out.
Well, Larry, it's been a pleasure.